Would Lewis Hamilton still win with 10% less downforce? Well, on the race where he is almost certainly going to clinch a championship, famous last words, because I imagine a lot of you will be watching this after the race, but yes, assuming he's going to clinch a championship this weekend, I wondered, and a lot of other people wonder, is he just winning because of his car, or is it him? Now, I do have a personal opinion on this, but I wanted to jump in the game and find out. So what we're going to do is on the right hand side there, we've taken away 10% of the downforce. On the left hand side, we've got full downforce. So first of all, we're going to run a quali lap and we're going to compare the two. Now, I should say, this is the F1 2019 game. I've modified it, and all I've done is taken away 10% downforce. The drag is actually the same, and there is an argument that drag squares with downforce, but I decided that actually, you know, you take off some downforce, you would take off some drag, but maybe it's just less efficient drag. So what we're simulating here really is if the Mercedes didn't have quite so much downforce, but still had similar levels of drag. And I've actually compared the numbers to the Williams, and it's very, very similar to the Williams. The downforce numbers are quite similar, as is the drag numbers. So this is fairly realistic representation, as if the Mercedes car had the same downforce, strictly downforce only level as the Williams. So anyway then, we are half through our quali lap already, and you can see I did quite a good job actually on the right hand side of sticking with pole. I'm not too far behind. Left hand side I did manage to get pole position just about as Lewis Hamilton. On the right hand side I did not. And you see, I'm not far away at the moment, and actually it surprised me. That first section is a very fast section, and I thought that was really going to affect me, but what I figured out was that actually it wasn't too bad, because primarily it's all about turning. The corners aren't long enough, and this is the section I found where I really lost the time, and maybe that was something to do with the tyres as well, but like this corner here, for example, I just wasn't quite able to keep flat, just wasn't confident enough in the car. Same with this corner, a longer corner, just wasn't quite able to take the speed. So it seems that direction changes aren't as heavily affected by downforce as you would think, at least not with 10% downforce. If I took off all the downforce, different story. And here are the lap times then. So I did a 1 minute 32.3 with normal levels of downforce, and with 10% less, I did 1 minute 33.1. So that's best part of 9/10 then slower over the course of the lap. So a significant amount, but it wasn't lost where I thought it would be in the first sector. So I found that very interesting indeed. So here we are then on the grid. We are starting then P5, so not just slightly above best of the rest then. Somehow we just about managed to out-qualify a Red Bull of Alexander Albon. So we'll be starting just behind the other Red Bull of Max Verstappen, and our teammates were on the grid then. We've got 5 lights and they're out and we're away. Pretty good reaction time to the lights there. We're on alongside Verstappen, I think, a little bit of struggling for traction a little bit. We almost made contact with his wheel there, but trying to break him on the outside, but no, we end up too deep there, running far too wide, but we're going to manage to keep our position at the very least. So we managed to keep P5. Have a look on the outside of Verstappen here. He's left us a bit of room. We should have better straight line speed. We should do indeed, and he's actually going to back out of it. That was a bit un-Verstappen-like, wasn't it? I think in real life he would not have backed out of that, but we will certainly take it in the game. Up to P4 then, we've got our teammate Valtteri Bottas up next, and we'll see if we can try and catch him. But of course, our pace, in theory, isn't as good as his. In theory, our pace is 9/10 slower than his. That's the difference in our lap time anyway. And I think he was about 7/10 quicker was his best lap. So he should be significantly quicker, but we're going to try and see if a bit of slipstream is going to enable us to carry on, because of course, in the race, there is a lot more variables. In qualifying, it's a lot more simple. In the race, you have a lot more variables, in particular, dirty air and slipstream is the biggest factors. Of course, you've got a bit of fuel load in there as well, and a bit of tyre wear. But and one of the interesting things I found, so far I am keeping up quite nicely. We're actually having a great battle. Got a front row seats, almost front row seats, second row seats to the Ferrari battle. But yeah, what I found was, first of all, that last corner there is a lot easier now. I think just because the downforce isn't quite so, I want to say peaky, but it's probably not quite the right word, but the downforce was a bit more forgiving. I wasn't going quite so fast. I was able to go through that last couple of corners a little bit easier, which surprised me. You'd think it'd be more of a handful. So I accidentally got onto third gear over the curb there, interestingly. I just accidentally double tapped the downshift and ended up down in third gear on the rev limiter. But luckily that didn't spin us out. That certainly could have. We could have locked the rears, but we got away with that one. Coming on the pit straight now then, we're just half a second back from Valtteri Bottas at the moment, so we've done a pretty good first lap. We will certainly take that, and but the biggest difference I found compared to qualifying compared to race trim was the dirty air. Now, normally in this game, the dirty air effect isn't as realistic as real life. It's just not as severe. But when you've got 10% less downforce than your teammate, the dirty air is a lot more severe. You see in this section as well, I'm just struggling. I just can't get anywhere near them. And you'll see a little bit later in the race as well. When I get a bit closer to the cars ahead, I just immediately lose out because the dirty air is just that much stronger, because I've probably already got similar downforce levels without any dirty air. I've got similar downforce levels to my teammate with dirty air. So you add dirty air into that equation, and I've just got no grip at all. Another thing to note as well, again, we're just kind of getting an overall feel for Hamilton, how Hamilton would do with 10% less downforce here. So another thing I noted as well was that Max Verstappen behind, of course this is a game, the variables aren't perfect, but Max Verstappen behind was not able to mount a challenge at me down that last straight because he just didn't have the straight line speed. And I know the Red Bull straight line speed isn't bad now, but it isn't still as good as Mercedes, I would say. So we just didn't have the speed to get alongside me, and that is of course a little advantage with the Mercedes car. It is pretty good. Of course the Ferrari car this year is better. In this game, interestingly, they aren't that much better in a straight line, but in real life of course they are. Ferraris are a lot better in a straight line, both in terms of less drag and more power. But in this particular game they aren't, so I was able to stay ahead of Verstappen. So that of course is one of Hamilton's little advantages with this car, is that it has got a lot of power. Granted it's not as much as Ferrari, but it has got a lot of power. It has also got reasonable levels of drag, but of course that is squares with downforce, so he has also got a nice solid downforce, but we have removed that, so that was an interesting one. But I guess the biggest takeaway for me is that, as I said at the start of the video, got similar downforce levels to a Williams now, and I've managed to qualify P5, and the Williams are right at the very back of the field. Now again, it's a game and I've not got full-on data analysis from this game, so it's hard to take firm conclusions, but I had a little think, and what I think the primary difference really is, first of all, it is straight line speed, drag, engine power, that sort of thing. But the biggest difference, I think, is both weight. I believe the Williams car, at least in this game, I'm not 100% about real life, I believe the Williams car is a little bit heavier than the Mercedes, and even if it's only a couple of kilograms, that makes a difference when you're when your cars are this quick. And I just paused there because I thought I was going to have a lunge at Valtteri Bottas, but think better of that because it would have ended up in a bit of a crash. So I believe weight is part of it, but I believe the most significant factor really is the suspension. Suspension, tyre management, all that sort of thing. So the Mercedes has got pretty good tyre management, hasn't it? Probably better than the Williams, I'd assume. And the suspension obviously is world class in the Mercedes. We don't know who's got the best suspension on the grid. It's one of those weird figures it's very hard to measure. I'm sure a lot of the teams would know just based on slow corner performance and that sort of thing, but we as the general public don't really know that. But I think that's the reason why I'm not actually losing that much in the first sector, because it's all about turning. It's about direction change and turning in. And downforce helps a lot with that, but really that suspension, is it? You're going from the car fully leaning on one side to the car fully leaning on the other side. Now, most of that weight change is all to do with suspension. So I believe that suspension is a big reason why I'm able to run up in P4 at the moment and qualify in P5, even though I've got more or less Williams levels of downforce. So that was really interesting. Of course, I'm able to take the curbs a lot better. Of course, as well, the slower speed corners, I am pretty much just as good with 100% downforce as I am with 90. Downforce, of course, is stronger the quicker you're going, so that stands to reason that the slower you're going, that the less strong downforce is, so that the effect is less effectively. So in those sort of corners, like that last one and the next one coming up, there isn't a lot of downforce going on. You're just not going quick enough. There's not enough air over the wings to make push the car into the track and make downforce make it a big difference. So I think that's the thing. So according to this game, at least, again, this is a game. It's I find it's relatively realistic, not in terms of handling, but in terms of the car performance, that sort of thing. It's pretty good for the most part. There is a lot of variables in that. As I said, there's tyres, there's tyre wear, there's suspension, there's weight, there's downforce. There is a lot going on there. So in this game, at least, that suggests that the Williams, a lot of their difference is down to suspension. Now, obviously, if you put another 10% downforce on the Williams car, that very easily could lead to a Williams podium or something. I don't know. We'll have to perhaps do another video on that. But it seems that Mercedes isn't just downforce. The top teams it's not all about downforce. It's not all about engine. Suspension is significant. Again, according to this game, suspension is really quite significant in terms of car development, in terms of speed, in terms of all of it. Really, it's just better. And of course, there's a lot of unmentionable factors as well. Not unmentionable, that's not the word I mean, but things like obviously team performance. Mercedes got great pit stops, although Williams are doing very good in that particular area. Strategists, they've just got a lot more working on the car. They've got a lot more data analysts. They'll have a better setup. All of these things, obviously, in real F1 that don't really come into it in the game. All of these things do make a huge difference overall when you compare to something like a Williams. The bigger teams just have a bigger advantage in that respect. And actually, I'd argue even having more fans, the drivers are more motivated. They've probably got better personal trainers because they've got more money. So there's so many variables here that it really is impossible to draw a firm conclusion as to Hamilton's performance and what is the key factor, and Mercedes in particular as well. But let's go back to the point in this video, is that downforce, 10% less downforce. How would Hamilton do with 10% less downforce? Well, according to this game, not that much worse, really. Qualifying would certainly suffer, but actually in race trim, okay, granted, I've not been able to overtake any cars in this whole race, and you saw every time I managed to get close to them, I was just being affected by the dirty air. So would he be able to win? Probably not. But the difference is a lot smaller than I thought it would be, and probably the same for a lot of you guys. I thought the difference would be quite significant. I thought I would be easily outside the top 10, battle in the midfield. Turns out, come home in P4, qualify P5 with 10% less downforce. That is significant. Most teams would give an arm and a leg for 10% more downforce. So there we are then. That was a little bit different. That was a bit more analytical, that video, and a bit more kind of diving into the benefit of Mercedes and Hamilton in particular. Fingers crossed I haven't just jinxed Lewis Hamilton. I am recording this before the race has happened, so hopefully he has won the championship this weekend, and if he doesn't, I'm sure it will be next weekend. But don't forget to subscribe if you're new, and I thank you all for watching. Bye-bye.